what would you say is your strategy when it comes to photographing at the aquarium? Are you a sit and wait kind of person, or do you tend to take just kind of capture moments as you see them?
I sit and wait. Whenever we first did Turtle World, not the new renovation, but when we did the original Turtle World, I took all the ID photographs for that, and I had tanks set up in our office. I had 4 set up on these 2 big tables. I had filters on them, and we would put the turtles in there. And the first thing a turtle does when you drop in a tank like that is it bulldozes everything all your props that you put in there. So you have to wait, let it filter out, and just sit there and wait and wait and wait. And some of them, like the tortoises, they clam up. They just close up and keep their head in. You have to sit there and wait for them to stick their head out, because you just don't want a picture of a turtle with its head stuck in its shell. You got to be patient. You have to be patient.
Hey there, Podcast Aquanauts. It's your host, Casey here. If you've ever been to the Tennessee Aquarium, or any other zoo or aquarium for that matter, you probably left with some great memories and, I'd be willing to bet, quite a few photos to remember your experience by. Even more than a lot of other attractions that vie for our attention, zoos and aquariums are just naturally photogenic places to visit. Animals, especially exotic or hard to locate ones, are popular photographic subjects for a reason. Unfortunately, international travel, as we've discussed in a previous episode of the show, can be prohibitively expensive, so visiting these animals at their home in the wild can be a difficult proposition, not to mention the likelihood of seeing some species in the wild being slim to none, even with an expert guide to help you. Aquariums and zoos offer an opportunity to see these animals and photograph them in more controlled circumstances and with a much higher likelihood of being able to walk away with decent images, assuming of course that you can successfully navigate the learning curve of using a camera in what amounts to a cave full of reflective surfaces. In this episode of the show, I've invited 2 of the aquarium's most accomplished and seasoned photogs into the studio dive cage to chat about the many challenges and rewards of photography in an aquarium. Hopefully, you'll walk away with some easy-to-remember tips on how to set yourself up for success when it comes to documenting your trip and photographing the aquarium's living collection. That's more than enough from me, though. Grab your favorite snack, polish up your lenses, and let's get things moving along, shall we? On with the podcast. Hello, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Podcast Aquatic, the official podcast of the Tennessee Aquarium. I'm Casey Phillips, your host, and today I thought we would have a discussion about photography, I guess. And joining me today on the episode is Todd Staley. Todd, you are the official staff photographer of the aquarium. Thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. Pleasure to be here.
And next to, well, both of us really, since there are only 2 guests today, is Doug Strickland. Doug, you are a communications content creator too.
Yes, that's correct.
We both had to think about it, I think. And both of you and me at one point have had responsibility for taking photos at the aquarium, which is it's a pretty important role when it comes to aquariums. Why do you think photography is so crucial to the success of places like zoos and aquariums, Todd?
The imagery is important. I mean, all the graphic panels that we've got throughout the building, all the animal IDs, it's important, the marketing aspect of it. You got to get good images out there for the public to see, to entice them to come in here and visit us and spend their money here.
That is important. We, at the end of the day, we are interested in getting people to buy tickets and come and visit us. Doug, why do you think that photography is so critical to the success of the aquarium and its mission?
It connects people to our mission. I mean, like Todd said, it helps get people excited about coming here and it gets them in the door, but it also gets them interested in conservation. It gets them interested in being a part of the work that we're doing here to protect freshwater and to conserve a lot of the species that live in freshwater. So, it's not just about having photos of colorful fishes and sharks and all the amazing animals we have here, but it's about showing people the work that we're doing so they understand how important it is to protect freshwater.
So it's not just about promotion, it's also about storytelling.
Exactly. I would say it's more, promotion requires storytelling. The storytelling is the vehicle for getting people in the door in the first place, and visuals are a key part of that.
All right, so let's go around the table go talk to the 2 of you, I guess, about how and when you started at the aquarium. So Todd, you've been here for a very long time. I'm not entirely sure when your start date was.
I started March 23rd, 1992.
Okay, so to give you some perspective, the aquarium opened on May 1st of 1992. So you actually predate the opening of the aquarium by a few weeks.
Yes.
So what was it like? What was your role at the time? Were you always staff photographer?
No, whenever I first came here, I had just gotten out of the service, and I came in to apply for a job. I heard about this place. I said, I'd love to work there. So I came in and I said, I've got a skill set that I used before I went in the service that you could use here. I was a runner for a law firm here in town, and I handled all of their mail services. I filed all their documents with the courts. I served subpoenas and summons and all that stuff. And I said, you need somebody like me. So they created a job for me. And that's how I started. And I worked that job for about 3 months. And then I came in one morning on my own time to take some photographs for myself. And as I'm going through photographing exhibits, my former boss, John Kelly, saw me that morning. He said, how'd you like a job in my department? And that's how I started.
So you started to work for John about 3 months in. What were you shooting at the time? Like, what kind of camera were you using? I'm sure that gear is going to come up a lot in this conversation.
It was a Nikon 6006, and I had a professional Polaroid that I would shoot to base my exposures on. And I was just handed a Novatron 1000 light kit, and John said, here's your cameras, here's a light kit, figure it out. And so I did. It was like I was like thrown right into the fire, but I liked it.
Was it like so? And I know we'll talk about particulars of what is required and the particular challenges of taking photos in an aquarium. But did you just have to learn on the job? Was John there to help you? Because I know John also was a photographer.
Yeah, no, I learned on the job. They had hired a guy out of Atlanta named Dick Bryant to shoot a bunch of the ID photographs. And he was doing a lot of the marketing work back then. And he got to be where he was a little bit difficult for the marketing department to work with. So they just said, take over, So that's how I got started.
So when you say ID photos, just for clarity, those are the photos that when you're looking at an exhibit to the left or the right of the exhibit, the panel that shows you what animals you're looking at.
That's correct.
Okay.
And I was running back and forth between the aquarium and a place on Highway 58 called Quality Photo. That's where we got all our processing done. And I'd go up there 2 or 3 times a day, because after we got this stuff shot, it was like, get it back here. We want to review it, see if we got to do it again. So we spent a ton of money on film.
And on gas, I would guess.
Yeah.
So, all right. So I want to dig into this more, but Doug, what was your introduction to the aquarium? How did you start working here? Much more recent.
Yeah. So I've been here going on 4 years now. And, I came in to our communications and marketing team as a content creator, which is kind of a vague way of describing what I do. What I do is
it's an umbrella term.
Yeah. We're really kind of a catch-all for a lot of the externally facing content here at the aquarium. Marketing materials, social media content, news releases, written content, and so. Previously, before I got to the aquarium, I was a photojournalist. I worked in newspapers, and that was my background. Most of my career had been spent photographing people. And so when I started here, that was really initially my focus when it came to our visual content was the people side of things, our conservation scientists in the field doing their work. And it gradually moved on as I got more time to kind of practice on my own to doing exhibit photography and that kind of stuff as well.
First of all, I'm glad that you're here because prior to you coming, I also was filling some of the roles as a photographer to kind of supplement what Todd was doing. I was doing a lot of I was pulling double and sometimes triple duty out in the field, covering some of that conservation work that you were talking about, having to both write about it for our members magazine while also taking a lot of the photos, and also eventually a video got kind of folded into that. So when we were told that we were expanding the team, I was so thankful that we were bringing you in. You and I had worked together for several years at the local newspaper here in Chattanooga, the Chattanooga Times Free Press. So I knew that your storytelling chops were really well honed, and it was nice to have you on the team. It's been nice to have you on the team. So the aquarium has a weird way of making photographers out of people who might never have otherwise seen themselves as photographers. I don't know, Todd, what your background was in photography prior to coming to the aquarium, because you said you kind of came in, were already taking photos. In my case, at least, I bought a camera specifically because I was working here, and I thought, why would I not want to take photos when my coworkers are thousands and thousands of beautiful animals. But did you have a background in photography before that?
Well, it was just for my personal use, but I used to take a lot of landscapes. I love to photograph birds. That was a big thing for me. So, yeah, I've been into photography since I was in my teens.
What was the appeal? Like, everyone has a story, I guess, for how they get into photography. So what was the thing that drew you into the art or the craft?
Nature. It was nature. It's just I love to photograph fall colors. A few years back, I did a trip around the southeastern United States and photographed every grist mill in the southeastern United States because I love old stuff like that. Old barns and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'm just really into stuff like that. And I did a lot of black and white work too, which I like black and white photography.
And that's its own special form of photography. A lot of different considerations you have to make when you're shooting black and white versus photo or versus color.
Yeah, exactly.
And Doug, you, in addition to being obviously the stuff you do here, you've done your own photography, I guess, on the side. So, what would you say is your favorite focus when it comes to focus? What's your favorite kind of photography? There's so many different specializations, as Todd mentioned, landscape photography and that sort of thing. So.
Again, my background before I started here was photojournalism, and I was very much a documentary photographer. My focus before I started here was long-term projects where I could spend a lot of time with the people I was photographing to really hone in on what the story was and to hone in on issues. I've been a photographer who always wanted to point my camera at particular issues and tell stories about things that matter and make a difference. Now that I work here, that's shifted a little bit. When you do something that you're passionate about for a living, it's hard for it not to just start to feel like work, and so there was a period towards the end of my photojournalism career where I really wasn't making pictures for myself at all anymore. And coming here and being able to point my camera at something new, and not just something new, but something incredibly challenging, because photographing nature photography, it first and foremost, but photographing in an aquarium even after that is an incredibly challenging form of photography. It's very specialized and it's really difficult to do. And that energized me, and I've always, like I said, I've always pointed my camera at issues and told stories about issues. And now I get to do that for freshwater issues and for conservation issues, that kind of stuff.
So you still feel like the work that you're doing is making a difference then?
Oh, absolutely.
Let's talk about the specific challenges of this forum for photography. So, as you mentioned, photography in an aquarium poses a lot of challenges that maybe you don't face in other scenarios. So, what would you say are the defining obstacles to overcome when you're taking photos in an aquarium? If you want to get a really good photo, what are the things you have to be thinking of?
Well, one thing is reflections in the acrylic. That's a bear. And the two ways to overcome that is either one, you get right up on top of it, or you back off of it and use a longer lens. And I've used both techniques. It just depends on how big the animal is I'm trying to photograph. Another thing you have to realize is whenever you're taking a photograph through our tanks, they're not glass, they're acrylic. Okay, glass magnifies, acrylic doesn't. But whenever you take that photograph, the light's passing through the water at one speed. It passes through the acrylic at a different speed, and it passes through your lens element at a different speed. So you can get what's called color fringing or chromatic aberration. It's like a little purple, bluish, green line.
Like a banding.
Yeah, kind of like that. You can get rid of that in Photoshop to a degree, though. But it's important to have the animal as close to the front of the acrylic as you possibly can so you can attain sharp focus, because the further back in the tank they are from you, the harder it is to focus on them.
Yeah.
And it's a good idea if you remember to do it, to wear dark clothing.
That is true.
Yeah. That's some of my tips.
You don't want to show up like a ghost in your own photos.
Right.
The aquarium blue shirt is not always the best when you're trying to photograph in our exhibits.
Exactly. And you can also, if you're not really right up on the acrylic, sometimes you can see a reflection of the rim of your lens in it. You can also see your hands in it from time to time. So it gets frustrating when you think you've got a great image and you look at it and you go, oh, that's my hand.
I remember when I first started taking photos at the aquarium, Doug and I both, I think I don't know if you've ever actually done film photography. Have you done film photography?
I have. I haven't done it professionally, but I've done it just as a hobby.
Okay. Well, in my case, at least, I live and breathe and have never done anything other than digital. So I didn't have a lot of the particular challenges associated with film, which I'm sure we'll talk about too. But I remember asking you, Todd, what I should get to improve my photos initially. And I think you almost immediately suggested buying a lens hood, which was really helpful for eliminating a lot of those reflections that you're talking about and keeping my hand out of the photos.
Yeah. And by the way, I just want to mention you two guys, when you started here, you took so much pressure off me. You just do not know. And I was relieved, and you've both done a great job.
Oh, thank you.
I appreciate that. I was really worried when I started that I was like stealing some of your thunder. So, and I didn't want to do that.
No, it was a hurricane before you guys got here. And it was just, I was jumping all over the place, and I was like, if I had any hair to pull out, I'd pull it out.
The aquarium life at the aquarium can move at a pretty rapid pace. And sometimes we like to say it's kind of like drinking out of a fire hose when it comes to trying to cover all the many things that are going on. So I'm happy to have helped, Todd. Doug, do you have any suggestions for ways that people can ensure that their photos at the aquarium are as high a quality as they can manage?
Well, I mean, the first thing you'll notice when you visit an aquarium is that it's dark. And so light is always going to be a challenge if you're photographing in our exhibits. We're really lucky because for a lot, if not most of our exhibits, maybe not everyone, we can bring our own light. So we can set up strobes either above the exhibit or sometimes outside of the exhibit on the other side of the acrylic. And that is what lets us get pictures that have really good color and clarity and sharpness, because water just bleeds color out of an image. You know, if when you're looking at our animals in the exhibits, a lot of times you're not seeing the full color until they come right underneath a light that's overhead, because that's just that the color spectrum is removed the deeper you go underwater.
Yeah, it's like in Ocean Journey, T30. That's our large saltwater tank. If you pay attention, the more you go down in the tank, it turns blue, because the first color you lose underwater is red. The reds go. So
yeah, as you're exploring Secret Reef, you'll go kind of, if you've never been to the aquarium, well, hopefully you will come. But if you're coming here for the first time, as you're exploring Ocean Journey, the building, you'll wrap around and down the Secret Reef exhibit. And so you kind of see it from different levels of the water column. And you're absolutely right. As you get to the bottom, the last exhibit you go through as you're leaving the building is the undersea cavern. At that point, you're at the bottom of the tank looking up, and yeah, it's very, very blue.
Yeah.
You know, we can overcome that by bringing our own light, but if you're just visiting the aquarium, you can't do that. So the best thing that you can do if you're bringing like a DSLR or a mirrorless camera, bring a fast lens. You know, bring a fast 50 or a fast 35.
Let's assume that people listening to this maybe don't have all of the photography vocabulary in their back pocket. So when you say a fast lens, what do you mean by that? I know what you mean, but
so you want to bring a lens that's like a 50 millimeter or a 35 millimeter that's not a zoom lens, that has a wide maximum aperture. So that's like 1.4, 1.8, 2.0 or something. And that's the aperture is the circle inside of the lens. It's made up of sort of blades that can expand and contract. And basically that changes the amount of light that is let in to expose the image. And so the more light you can let in, the better results you're going to have when you're taking pictures in a low light situation, like if you were photographing in one of our sort of dimmer exhibits.
So if you're looking at like a catalog of photo equipment and you're looking at lenses, what you're going to look for is the aperture is going to be signified by the letter F.
Correct.
Followed by a number. And the number that you're talking about, that 1.4, it'll be like F 1.4, F 1.8,
Correct.
F 2.8. And it's like, It's counterintuitive, but it's kind of like golf. So the lower the number, the more light is going to be let in. And if you're trying to get more light, like that's the better scenario when you're taking photos inside of an aquarium. So in this particular case, when you say fast, you mean a smaller number.
That's correct. And most camera manufacturers are going to have, because everybody wants to be budget conscious, right? And photography gear can be incredibly expensive. Just about every camera manufacturer has what people call a nifty 50, which is going to be a 50 millimeter 1.8 or 2.0 aperture lens. And those are usually very affordably priced compared to other camera equipment.
That was, I believe, Todd, the other thing that you recommended that I get as one of my first additions to my photography kit.
Yeah, exactly. And another thing is, most people that come in here to take photographs are not going to have a pro grade camera. They're going to have what's called a prosumer. But digital photography has progressed so much in such a short amount of time that they can handle high ISOs. That's the speed that would be if you were using film that the camera uses, that they can handle high ISOs really well with a much finer grain than they were in the past.
So, okay, well, taking another break to try and explain a photography term. So ISO, I'm not sure what the ISO stands for. I'm sure you probably, one of the two of you probably does what that stands for.
It's been a long time.
Okay,
yeah,
well.
in film parlance, it would be ASA.
Right.
But it's effectively measuring the same thing. It's the amount of light that in a digital camera, the amount of light that the sensor is absorbing. In film, it would be the amount of light that the film absorbs in a certain amount of time. And basically, a higher number means that it's going to be more light sensitive, but it's also going to start introducing
grain,
artifacts and grain into the image.
Yeah. So you can sometimes go up to like 25,000, 52,000 in some cases. But those are going to look really.
It's going to look like a bunch of dots.
It'll look like garbage.
Yeah.
But what you're saying though is that digital photography has progressed to the point where you can take usable quality photos with a higher number ISO.
Right, and they've also got plugins for Photoshop nowadays. There's one that I use called Topaz Labs, and it's artificial intelligence, but it does such a good job of removing grain and sharpening images, and it's just a slider. It's all you have to do is you just move the slider, and it's got a split screen where you see your before and after images, and it's impressive, and it's only costs $80.
Now we might be getting a little too in the weeds with the photo speak here, because the reality is the vast majority of people who visit the aquarium are probably going to be taking pictures on their phone.
You took the words out of my mouth. That's where that was going next.
That is true.
And for that kind of stuff, if you're here having fun with your family, you just want to get some nice photos at the aquarium. Todd already said, get as close to the acrylic as you can if you're trying to get photos of animals, and wait for the animal to get as close to you as you can before taking the picture. But also try to sort of be square with the acrylic. If you're straight on versus at an angle, you're going to get clearer images.
Sharper images, yeah.
It's going to be easier to focus because the more at an angle you are to the acrylic, the more blurry and distorted everything's going to look.
Of course, you're shooting through more material
exactly
as you get an angle.
Well, and in addition to that, although that's sort of contradictory to that, if you're dealing with something like reflections, sometimes shifting your angle just a little bit can take the reflection out of an image. Even if it ultimately results in maybe a less sharp image, you can get some of the reflections of like signage behind you or a light overhead out of an image, or just moving your body sometimes around will help you to kind of block that light if you don't have a lens hood or a blackout cloth like sometimes we use.
A lot of folks want photos of their family in front of exhibits, that kind of thing. And inevitably, because our galleries are dark and the exhibits are lit, you end up with backlit images. So, try to pay attention to where the light's falling. If you turn the person you're photographing just a little bit so that the light on the exhibit side is falling on their face, you might be able to get better results than if you just have them stand straight up against the acrylic and point straight onto them, because then they're just going to look kind of like a shadow, a silhouette, and that's all you're going to be able to see.
Yeah. And the other thing to remember, and I see people do this all the time, and I understand the inclination to do it, or maybe even just the not knowing that it's even happening or that there's an option to make it not happen, but just don't use a flash.
If you're compelled to use one, make sure you can get it off the camera body.
Yeah.
Put it off to the side or up above, because if you straight on, it's just going to be a flash.
It's going to turn the acrylic into just a mirror. All you're going to see is just a washed out white background.
And a bunch of fingerprints where everybody's had their hands on it,
Well, our housekeeping department does its utmost to ensure that those fingerprints are gone. But if you're here toward the end of the day, there's just no stopping. Kids are going to touch acrylic.
Oh yeah.
What would you say is your favorite exhibit to take photos of in the aquarium? I didn't introduce any of these questions to you beforehand, so I'm catching you all in the moment.
That's a really good question.
I mean, my favorite subject's the lemurs.
Okay, well, I think I knew that about you, actually.
Yeah, but as far as aquatic exhibits go, I would say Island Life.
Okay.
The reef exhibit. We call it IL1.
Okay, yeah, the Indo-Pacific Reef, I think, is what it's called if you're just coming to visit the aquarium.
Yeah, because I love the colorful reef fish that we got in there. Mm-hmm. And there's so many different species. So it's
including my favorite, the Harlequin sweet lips, which mostly I love the species.
They just, it's like being a kid in a candy store. You've got so much to pick from.
That is a gorgeous exhibit.
If I'm shooting on the gallery side, I really like the Register Rivers exhibit. First of all, it's easy to get lights directly above it, and it's a pretty reasonably well lit exhibit in the first place.
It's pretty bright.
Yeah, it's bright. It's you don't have to climb anywhere to get any lights up anywhere. You can just kind of get them right overhead and still be on the gallery side. And it's filled with a lot of really cool native fishes that you would see if you went and stuck your face in the Conasauga River. And if you're here at the right time of the year, they start to get really nicely colored up and really show off the way that those fish would look in the wild in the spring around spawning season.
Yeah, we should say this is being recorded in the very earliest days of April. So yeah, the fish like you're talking about are starting to color up and will become more colored up in the next couple of weeks, hopefully.
I used to not especially enjoy photographing Secret Reef because it is an absolutely massive exhibit, and it's not. I haven't even attempted to light it because it's so large and it takes extremely powerful lights and it takes a lot of them.
Most lights, yeah.
But in the last few months since I got scuba certified, I've actually been diving in there to get video. I haven't attempted any photography underwater yet, but the more time I spend in the exhibit rather than on the dry side, just getting visual content in there, the more appealing it is to try to do more of that. So I'm excited about what I might be able to get out of there over the next couple of months.
Yeah, unfortunately, if you're visiting the aquarium, you probably are not going to get the opportunity to dive in the exhibit and get photos and videos, but it's actually really impressive to see some of the early photos and video clips that you've been able to get from inside the exhibit, because it really transforms your experience of that exhibit. When you were showing me some examples of what you managed to get, I felt like I was seeing the exhibit for the first time, and I've seen it hundreds, thousands of times probably at this point.
That's how it felt diving in there for the first time too. I grew up in Chattanooga. I was born here. I spent most of my life here. And I was 17 years old when the Ocean Journey building first opened, and I've been looking at that exhibit for a very long time, and it was kind of transformative to see it in such a new way for the first time. And I hope that I can share what that looks like with people through photos and video too.
So Todd, you have an unusual perspective on this, because both of us, so Todd, Doug and I both had an experience or experienced the aquarium as visitors before we ever started working here. You've never had the experience of looking at these exhibits from the visitor's perspective.
No, I haven't.
So what is your favorite angle that you're able to get when it comes to photos that maybe like Doug was mentioning, so getting inside the secret reef, do you have a favorite, like behind the scenes or staff only perspective that you've been able to photograph from that really stands out to you as a particular favorite?
I really used to like to take photographs in the queue room, in our quarantine room, especially when they were moving larger animals like our sea turtles. That was always interesting to see. Our beluga sturgeon that we used to have.
Horace and Boris?
Yes, Horace and Boris. And they were old. Those were some old fish. But
and big fish.
Yes, big fish. And we used to have a gigantic alligator snapping turtle down there back in the day. I mean, way, way long time ago. And also behind the scenes with the alligators was fun back in the day because they were larger alligators. We had some in there that were probably 10 feet. They're big boys.
Wow.
And yeah, and I would just like to throw this out there. When I first started working here, John Kelly, my former boss, he said, there are two things that are the most difficult things to photograph: animals and little kids. And guess what you get to do?
Yeah,
it's because they're unpredictable.
They are.
And fast moving.
Yes.
Yeah, the fish in particular. I find that in my experience, the things I liked to take photos of were the things that were more or less predictable. The photos I'm probably most proud of that I've taken in the time that I was in the pre-Doug time were the things that were a little slower moving and a little easier to wait for the right moment and not have to just kind of catch it because my camera's in burst mode. Things like ducks and turtles. Although ducks can be pretty unpredictable too, but there are times when they're like just sitting on the logs or posing and trying to. I have one of a duck trying to dry its feet off, and it just the pose of the duck is something that I think I'll always remember. I think it just I captured it in the moment pretty well. It's one that stands out that I can be proud of. What would you say is your strategy when it comes to photographing at the aquarium? Are you a sit and wait kind of person, or do you tend to take just kind of capture moments as you see them?
I sit and wait. Whenever we first did Turtle World, not the new renovation, but when we did the original Turtle World, I took all the ID photographs for that, and I had tanks set up in our office. I had 4 set up on these 2 big tables. I had filters on them, and we would put the turtles in there. And the first thing a turtle does when you drop in a tank like that is it bulldozes everything all your props that you put in there. So you have to wait, let it filter out, and just sit there and wait and wait and wait. And some of them, like the tortoises, they clam up. You know, they just close up and keep their head in. You have to sit there and wait for them to stick their head out because you just don't want a picture of a turtle with its head stuck in its shell. You got to be patient. You have to be patient.
When I started, I was very much a wanderer. You know, I treated going through the aquarium kind of like I would have treated a news assignment at an event somewhere, and it didn't help, or it helped that a large part of my job is also writing our weekly internal newsletter that's just sort of updating the staff on the news of the week at the aquarium. And so I would kind of start at the top of one building and work my way down and just look for moments along the way, and then I'd go and I'd do the same thing in the other building, and I'd chat with our staff and our husbandry team along the way and just find out what was going on. And the longer I've been here, the more intentional I've become about deciding I'm going to go make pictures here today, and I'm going to plan, and I'm going to set up, and I'm going to sit and spend a lot of time here rather than just kind of passing through and hoping I see something. I mean, there are benefits to both methods. You know, we because we work here every day, we happen to see a lot of things that are just really great moments that you don't see all the time and don't happen every day. Whether it's, you know, piles of turtles on a log that are acting kind of goofy, or a bunch of catfish lined up at the bottom of the Tennessee River exhibit like they're having a meeting.
Stingrays rising up and splashing out of the water in Stingray Bay.
Yeah. You know, you catch those things just wandering around, but there's a lot of benefit to being intentional and patient as well. And preparation goes a long way towards making a nice image.
I think you two are both better about being patient than I am. I was almost always a wanderer, and it was only when I had to. I also wrote the aquarium update prior to you taking on that role. Thank you very much. And yeah, it was only in times when I knew that I was covering a particular topic for the aquarium update, when I knew I had to have an image to go with that I would usually go and sit and wait. Most of the time I was just taking photos as I could, because I was trying to do too many other things. And so I did more of the wander like you're talking about. And I could definitely see benefit to waiting for something to happen. I think the only time that I ever did that and had any success was really waiting at in River Otter Falls, the first exhibit you explore as you're visiting the aquarium. There is a window that's under the water where kids can come and kind of look and see. Well, I say kids, I guess anyone could, but it's usually kids in this little like cave, and look into the exhibit and see the otters as they behave underwater. And I always loved to kind of camp out there. If I was going to stay somewhere, it was usually there to try and wait for them to like get in front of that window. And just the way they move through the water is so graceful and almost like a ballet dancer. And so waiting for them to just have a cool like form, have contorted their body into some really appealing way was always a nice exercise for me.
And I also, when I walk through in the mornings, I'll make a mental note. I'll say that dollar sunfish looks really good right now. So go get the light, set it up, photograph that. Just little mental notes like that. I'll see something that stands out. I'll go get the camera. It's good, and it's good to be able to do that. I can just stop what I'm doing here, unless I'm pressed. Go get the camera, take a few photographs, and it's been fun doing this as long as I've been here. I mean, I've had a ball. I really have.
I mean, it's a great place to take photos.
Oh yeah. You got so many subjects. It's just a wonderful place.
The Tennessee Aquarium's podcast Aquatic is made possible by support from the Tennessee Conservationist, the official magazine of Tennessee state parks. Each issue is filled with fascinating stories about Tennessee's native species, rich history, and unique culture. It's also your guide to exploring state parks and planning your next outdoor adventure. Subscribe today at tnconservationist.org. So I mentioned the photo I took of that duck, and that being a particular favorite of mine. What is a photo or a couple of photos that stand out to you as ones that you're especially proud of?
There was one that I took in our original otter exhibit. There used to be this huge rock out in the middle of it. You guys remember that? Okay.
I vaguely remember that, yeah.
We were doing a cover for the River Watch at that time, and I was working with one of the herps that was working with the otters at that time, Jennifer. And I said, I need to get two of them up on that rock. I don't want to get them standing up. Can you help me? And so she got this long pole and put some smelt on it and was holding it up above them so they would stand up.
Smelt is a type of fish.
Yeah, it's a type of fish. And they actually had their arms around one another. It was like they were hugging each other, and I was like, that's one of my favorite photographs I've ever taken.
Wow.
And then I've got one of Yoda, who's one of our ring-tailed lemurs. I got him in mid-leap. We were baiting him with carrots, to jump from one limb to another, and it's in sharp focus. There's no motion blur to it, and I'm like, that's a winner.
I've never managed to do that. That's impressive.
It's got some legs on it. I was using a really fast lens, like Doug was talking about. I was using a 1.4, I think is what it was.
Wow.
And shooting it wide open and shooting it like a 500th of a second, and it just worked out great.
Wow.
It just worked out great. So,
Doug, you've not been here nearly as long, but I mean,
No.
you've taken some amazing photos too. Which ones stand out to you from your tenure thus far?
So I have two standouts. I don't know that they're my favorite photos. I don't even know that they're the best photos I've taken here. But they're photos I really enjoy. One of them is actually the photo that's on my lock screen on my phone.
I know which one you're talking about now.
But it's Stewie, our green sea turtle in the Secret Reef. I mentioned that I wasn't a big fan of photographing the Secret Reef, but this was one of those moments where things just came together really, really well. I was on one of my wanders through the Ocean Journey building, and I came to the first window for Secret Reef, which is just past Penguins Rock, and also happens to be where the best overhead light is coming into that exhibit. And like right as I got there and kind of did a couple of photos and got an exposure set for that area, Stewie just happened to swim right on through the frame and kind of like waved up with his right flipper, almost like he was waving to me. And it was one of those lucky moments that has been one of my favorite photos because everything kind of came together. The exposure was nice. The light was good. And it was a really clean image, not a lot of other stuff going on to distract you from the turtle. So that's been one of my favorites. The other one is a photograph that I really kind of hurried through, but turned out really nicely. It's a picture that looks a lot like Todd's ID photos of a lake sturgeon fry out at our conservation institute. We get the fry in every year. We raise them up until they're 6 or 7 inches long, and then reintroduce them into the Tennessee River. And to my knowledge, up until this point, we have photos of the fry, but we don't really have any ID style photos of them that are taken after they come in. Anything that really shows like the color and the shape and the texture of the fish in a nice profile way. So I just decided while we were out there one day, I'm gonna just really quickly get this photo, and we got a good looking fry out of one of the runs. We put it into a little viewing aquarium, and I took a flash in a little softbox right over the top of it and popped off, I think maybe 8 frames. And I mean, I looked at it later, and it looked great. I was really happy with it.
I remember this photo. This is a really good photo.
I think I like it not so much because of the picture itself, although it's pretty cool to see a baby lake sturgeon look like that. It's got a dark background, like photographed against a black background, basically. But I think more for me is like the meaning behind it, because it's so central to our mission around lake sturgeon restoration in the Tennessee River. For anyone listening who's not familiar, lake sturgeon were once extinct in the Tennessee River, and this has been a core mission of the Tennessee Aquarium to restore that species, along with other members of the Lake Sturgeon Working Group for over 25 years now.
Yeah, we started in 1998 was the foundation of the working group, and then we started releases in 2000, so 25 years ago. It's a really incredible project, and it is a really incredible photo. One that occurred to me as I was listening to the two of you, another one that I'm particularly fond of is in our larval fish nursery, which is where we take fish that we have been raising up behind the scenes that were hatched from eggs that were laid in the secret reef. So this is us doing our part to minimize the impact we have on wild populations by trying to raise some of our own fish in-house. And in that exhibit, once the fish get large enough that they leave the systems that are behind the scenes, they go into this viewable exhibit in the Island Life Gallery. And there were long spine porcupine fish. And I don't know that they were actually raised in-house, but they were young fish that were too small to go on exhibit yet. And I have a picture of one of those long spine porcupine fish swimming up against the acrylic really close, like Todd was talking about, how you get the really sharp images. And I got really, it was this fish filled the frame, and you can really appreciate how ridiculously pretty their eyes are. And that's one of the things I love in our photos. I especially love, and I think you do too, maybe both of you, but I know that Doug, you've taken some great photos of animal eyes before. And I love to get animal eyes. I think that's just one of the most fascinating things, like whether like a cuttlefish eye images really show you how their eye shape is so unique and tells you a little bit about their natural history. And like alligator eyes are another one that's really beautiful. They look like burnished gold.
Doug mentioned he used a term that I think is appropriate: luck.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Luck has a lot to do with it. I mean, the shot I got of Yoda, luck.
Yeah.
I just happened to be on the shutter release at the right time.
Well, but
and I held my mouth just right.
it's a little more than just luck, though. It's a combination of luck and preparation, right?
Well, yeah.
Because you need to be in the right place.
That's
you need to be ready.
True. And I picked Yoda in particular because he's so cooperative. He's real easy to work with. He'll do anything for a treat that you want him to do. And I was like, I know that he'll do this for me. And he did.
how crucial would you say it is that we have buy-in and collaboration with the animal caretakers when it comes to getting some of these photos that you two are justifiably proud of?
It's absolutely crucial.
Yeah, vital.
And they're always willing to help. I mean, I can ask them on short notice, any of them, they're like, yeah, give me a bit, we'll figure out a time we can do it,
It helps that they all really like seeing nice pictures of their animals.
I was about to say, I think they appreciate the end product as much as the audience who's going to get it on our social channels or marketing. Yeah, there's something special about seeing an animal, like a really good photo of an animal can like reveal something of their personality, I think. Like in, trying to think of a good example of this, and I'm going to blank now and I have to delete all this, but like Sunshine. Sunshine is our female otter, the only female river otter that we've got at River Otter Falls. And she's young and she's exuberant. And I think some of the photos that you've got of her when she first came, of her just being in the water and doing some of that contorting I mentioned earlier, being acrobatic under the water and graceful and sinuous looking under the water, really tell you a lot about just her personality and how charismatic she is. And I think that's one of my favorite things about the photos that you were able to get of her when she first joined the aquarium or came to the aquarium. It was like August of 2022, I guess. She's been here for a couple of years now. And that was a good example of how a really good photo can tell you a lot more about an animal than just what they look like.
Well, I mean, we started this conversation talking about building connections with, guests who might want to come visit here with our audience, and how important that is to our mission and to get people to want to visit and to get people to care about our animals. And that gets right back to the core of what it is that Todd and I both do here. It's about making images that build that connection, and personality is a big part of that. Eyes are a big part of that. Just like with humans, eyes are the window to the soul, and animals have personality too. Even fish have personality, and that can come out in a photograph.
Yeah. Well, and there are images, I think some of my favorite images of guests interacting with animals are like in Stingray Bay, because there are a lot of animals in that exhibit. It's the largest touch experience at the aquarium, and people sometimes ask, what if the rays don't want to be touched? Well, they have opportunities to not be touched. The exhibit is designed in such a way that they can make the choice to be close to the acrylic or not. And there are certain rays that, for whatever reason, I don't think it's anthropomorphizing to say that they are courting that kind of physical interaction. And I love to get pictures, or I did back when I was still taking more photos, of guests, especially young kids, interacting with those rays, because that just tells you, it really captures one of the most important things about aquariums, which is how those close interactions can forge meaningful, deeper bonds with the natural world than you would get maybe even just looking at an animal through that, with that acrylic barrier. When you're actually able to have that physical interaction, that's a pretty special moment. And those are the kind of images that you often see families trying to capture as well.
Another good place for interaction like that is the butterfly garden.
Oh, yeah.
Whenever you've got school groups of small kids in there and they get one to land on their a butterfly lands on their shoulder, on their nose.
Oh, yeah.
And you take a photograph of that one child, all of them want their photograph taken like that. The interaction is pretty cool.
So we talked about the photos that you're especially proud of having taken. What's a photo that you are still waiting to get? One that's just like your unicorn, the one that you're chasing that you have never managed to get?
That's a difficult question.
There are a lot of darters in Regis rivers that I still don't have photos of on an exhibit, and it's kind of because of the design of that exhibit. We talked earlier about how it really helps to be kind of square on with the acrylic and the animal, and the bottom of that exhibit on the interior is just 4 or 5 inches lower than the lowest point you can get to outside of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so those darters just like to linger on the bottom, and you're at an angle and you just can't get a good, clean, sharp image of them. And a lot of the bottom feeders, or bottom dwellers rather, in rivers of the world are the same way. There are some exhibits with pretty deep bottoms below the shelf in the gallery there, where you're never you're never, unless he happens to be in a very convenient spot, you're never going to get a photo of the pleco in the very first Amazon River exhibit.
Or the Raphael catfish is another one that's impossible to get good photos of.
Yeah,
they're just never
very
up.
difficult.
Or the ripsaw catfish in flooded Amazon. That's one that first of all, I think that exhibit is not appreciated enough. It's the last one you see as you're exiting river journey. And I feel like that one is people just walk past it. And if you really stop and look, there's just so much activity from the very top to the very bottom. And the very bottom is unfortunately where the ripsaw catfish, which I think is inarguably the coolest catfish. I mean, just listen to its name in the whole building. And they're just the most neat looking animals with these like razor-like tooth-like scoots on the side of their body. They look like they would just tear you up if they thrashed from side to side. And they're just always like 10 feet below or 8 feet below where you are. So they are very hard to take photos of.
I've taken a photograph like this before, but I could do better. In river giants, we've got the giant whiptail rays, and the divers feeding them up against the acrylic with the ray up on the acrylic, the diver's hand up under it. I've taken several like that, but I haven't got one that it could be better. It could be better.
Your perfectionism is showing.
Yeah, I think that's a perpetual thing for both of us. It seems like that I have a lot of photos that I'm like, I'm just not quite happy with this one. I can do better.
Well, that's just a sign of being good at your craft or dedicated to your craft. I think it's important to never be completely satisfied.
Another thing that used to be fun behind the scenes was whenever we had the arapaima in the flooded Amazon forest, and they would feed them up top. And whenever the arapaima, they gulp air. And whenever they would drop a piece of fish in the water, the arapaima would come up and suck the fish down. And it sounded like somebody dropped a concrete block in the water. It was just this big boom. Mm-hmm. And it was impressive. I got some good shots of that.
That's another one that I've had to like try to camp out for when I was covering, I think, our attempts to train them. And wanting to get a shot of what you're talking about, that they're obligate air breathers, so having to come to the surface. And inevitably what would happen is I would be looking in one direction, and then behind me, I would hear that noise signifying that another arapaima that I wasn't focused on at all just did what I was trying to get the photo of.
At one point, this has been years and years ago, in the Rivers of the World exhibit, the first Amazon tank you come to, there had been talk about trying to get some what are called archer fish in there.
Oh, archerfish.
And what archerfish do is they pluck insects off leaves by spitting water at them. And I was like, that would just make the coolest photograph if you could shoot at high enough shutter speed to stop that spout of water before it hits the insect on the leaf. And I was like, please get those in here. Please get them in here. Never did happen.
Two that I've wanted to get my entire time, and I've managed to get a couple of decent pictures, but I also would say that I could do better, are the panther chameleon eating. If you can get a fast enough shutter speed, really getting that tongue out and preferably like making contact with the insect or the insect that they're eating, a cricket like mid, like freak out on the way back to that chameleon's mouth. And then the other one would be a penguin, whether it's a gentoo or a macaroni, diving into the water, and just the curtain of bubbles that kind of follows them into the water. Getting all that really, really sharp is something that I've wanted to do, and I've never really been satisfied with any of the images I've taken.
Well, we can always set lights up above that exhibit and make that happen.
Well, that's Doug's job now. Doug can do that. I think we're running up on almost an hour here, so we'll go ahead and wrap this up. Do you have any additional thoughts, Todd, about what taking photos here for as long as you have, and how the changes to technology and the things that you've had access to and new methods and all that have changed in the last 30 years? What that's meant to you and what your job has meant to you?
This job has been my life. I mean, I love coming into work here, and they've always been so good to me and provide me with the equipment that I need to do my job. When it comes to the end of the year to budget money for new gear or whatever, I've never been turned down, not once. It says, you need it, you got it. And that's made my job a lot easier, getting the gear that I have to do my job properly. And I'm very grateful to the Tennessee Aquarium for that.
People probably actually now want to know what you shoot with. So what camera body are you taking these photos with?
I've got two right now. I'm using a Canon R5 full frame body, and I'm also using a Canon 90D. That's what's called a crop body. It's a 1.5 magnification factor, and I use that to shoot IDs of the very small fish.
So what I'm hearing then is that you betrayed your Nikon roots then to go turncoat.
I went from Nikon to it was the medium format. What was that? Anyway, it was a medium format camera, 645. And then John said, let's try Canon and see if you like Canon better than Nikon. And when I started shooting Canon, I was like, autofocus is better. I need the good autofocus here. So I've stuck with Canon ever since. And the R5 body's impressive. It is. That's a great camera.
And Doug, I'm not wrong. That's what you shoot with too, right?
Yeah. I also use an R5.
Should we tell people what lenses you use? I mean, do you have like a go-to lens that you take most of your photos with?
Well, my mainstay for years was a 28 to 135 because it covers a good range in there. But now I've got a 24 to 105 that's a mirrorless lens for the R5 body, and that's an impressive camera lens. It's one of Canon's flagship lenses nowadays. 100 millimeter macro is crucial for what I do here. I've got it's a 14 to 40 millimeter L series Canon lens. That's my wide angle go-to. That's a really nice lens too.
Doug?
Todd's a little more specialized than I am, so I usually use less equipment. So I've got a 24 to 70 that I use, a zoom lens. That's probably 90% of my photos are taken on that. And then I rely heavily on the 100 millimeter macro as well. That's my second most used lens. Very important for the work we do here.
Yeah, that's probably the most important lenses.
And I've got to say that having learned how to take pictures at an aquarium in the digital age, when I can just look at my camera back and see what my exposure looks like, what my lights are doing, and the effect that that's all having on my image, I have an awful lot of respect for Todd for having gone through that same process in the film era when you didn't get instant feedback of like, yes, I'm making a good image, or no, this is underexposed, it's overexposed, the fish isn't lit, it's backlit. It's hard to describe how challenging it is to figure that out in our exhibits, even when you have a digital image that you can instantly look at.
I was about to say, it's hard even when you can get that instant feedback.
Yeah.
So having to drive twice a day up to have your photos developed, I can't imagine.
And you come back and you look at them and you're like, I got to do it again. Okay, here we go.
I mean, I figure if I take 100 photos, like 5 of them might be usable. So I can't imagine taking rolls and rolls of film and then.
Yeah, it got disheartening at some points. I'd be like, I just can't get this right. Get the lights right. What am I doing wrong? And then it dawned on me all of a sudden. It was like, oh, why didn't I think of that before? And then I shoot it and take it back up and get it back. So I'm like, yes, that was it.
Well, I think with that, we can go ahead and wrap up today's episode. I hope that you enjoyed learning a little bit more about what you can do to take better photos at the aquarium, and a little bit about the background and philosophy when it comes to taking photos here from 2 of the people who have done it the longest and who have had the most involvement in our storytelling, photographic storytelling here at the aquarium. My thanks to Doug Strickland, our communications content creator too, and to Todd Staley, our official staff photographer here at the aquarium. Thank you both.
Thanks, Casey.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Podcast Aquatic. If you have an idea for a future episode of the podcast and want to share that, you can email me at podcast@tnaqua.org. While you're online, leave us a rating or write us a review if you have the time. Those are both free and easy ways to support the show, and are very much appreciated, especially by the algorithm, which helps us to reach more people. And in the meantime, until next time, remember that every drop matters.